What's up, everybody? Once again, it is I, James, coming to you from the Nerdy Mewzings podcast studio. I am joined today by a gentleman who is part of a small, select group. He is joining the ranks of individuals who have returned as a guest on the podcast. Mr. Thomas Pitilli is here again. How you doing, Thomas?
I'm doing well. Thank you. That's an honor. I'm glad to be one of the few returning guests.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I'm trying to think, man, it's been like, what, well over a year and a half, I
Yeah,
think, since you
I,
were
I would
on.
say so. Probably about that time. And I always, since that podcast that we did, I look back on it very fondly because it didn't feel like a podcast interview. It just felt
Right.
like having a good conversation. So I'm looking
Ex-
forward to this one.
exactly, man. Yeah, and I wanted to tell you while we're actually live and recording, I could have told you off air, but yours is one of the most viewed episodes of the podcast to date.
Wow, wow.
Yeah, you're like within the top 10 most viewed. You were just so I couldn't when I did that top 5 review of the most watched, I had to stick with the year it was in.
Sure.
You were just outside of that and you would have been in the top 5.
I'm a Drexler.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you would have been in that list had the episode been at the right date to be
no, no,
included
still.
in my
It,
contest there.
it's an honor. That's really great to hear. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, you have quite the following over on your YouTube now.
It's growing, and it's great to see. I love making those videos and having an audience that likes to watch them makes it even better. And it's
Yeah.
definitely it encourages me to keep making the videos, but also like getting that kind of feedback too. It gives me an indication of the type of videos that might be well received and stuff that I like that other people like. And so I just kind of like follow down certain paths that if I wasn't getting that feedback, I might not have, talked about certain things or brought
Yeah.
certain things up.
Now, just for the benefit of the any new viewers or listeners who haven't caught the first appearance that you were on here, Thomas runs a YouTube channel. I would call it kind of a art instruction slash comic art appreciation, process junkie, like
All
anything
of that.
related to creating comics. Your channel covers it.
Yeah, all of that. I think, I like to focus on the art aspect of all that stuff. And also sometimes even the overlap between comic art and say traditional illustration, sometimes even a little bit of like animation in the pre-production sense, but
Yeah.
always from the perspective and the lens of being an art maker or just an art appreciator. And so it's less about obviously talking about like storylines and characters and that kind of fandom, which plenty of other people do really
Oh
well.
yeah.
Mine is sort of just based on like, from a maker's perspective.
Yes. In from like a cartoonist slash illustrator's perspective, to give a Cliff Notes version, why don't you let any new listeners know a little bit about your background and your formal training in art and break it down. Give the 1 to 2 minute version just in case we do have a lot of returning listeners.
Oh, for sure. I've, probably like a lot of your listeners who are into making art and comics and illustration, all that kind of stuff. It starts very young. So I've been just drawing since I was a little kid. Seems like straight out of the womb, I kind of came out with a pencil in my hand. But I always wanted to be an artist in some way. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an animator, just because I was watching so many cartoons, and I would watch a cartoon and then want to draw whatever I saw immediately after. So that kind of like initially got me into thinking like, how is this stuff made and how could I make it myself, even at a very young age. And then quickly, as I started to draw what I was watching on the cartoons, I realized that I can't make these things move, but I could draw them sequentially and tell a story that way. And that led me to an appreciation for comics, because I had older brothers, particularly my oldest brother. He's an artist as well. And, he used to collect comic books too when we were kids. And so I would see all that stuff, and probably by the time I was like 9 or 10 years old, it just kind of like cemented in my head that I wanted to be, I wanted to draw these comic books and create my own characters and draw for Marvel and DC and all that kind of stuff, which again, I bet a lot of your listeners could relate. And I think we were all kind of jazzed on that stuff when we were kids.
For sure.
But I kind of took it really seriously. I think at a certain point, a lot of people kind of, get into other things that are probably more practical and profitable, but I just kept sticking with that idea. And so by the time it came to, time to go to college, I went to an art college in New York, where I'm from. And they had an actual major in illustration and comic art. This is School of Visual Arts in Manhattan. And I thought it was really cool that I could go to college and study how to be a comic book artist. It seemed like killing two birds with one stone. So
yeah, no kidding.
I that's like, as far as like my formal education in art goes, that's really, I guess, where it started. And it was there that I think I got exposed to a lot more like comics outside of what I was used to, and outside of what I was kind of like aspiring to, which at the time was very much Marvel, DC, mainstream type stuff. But when I went to art school, I was shown a lot of like independent comic creators and underground comic creators and the whole world of, alternative comics, self-publishing, all that stuff. And so it exposed me to a broader way of looking at comic art as well as illustration. I started taking illustration classes and realizing that you could be a professional artist and not be a comic book artist. You could also just draw one illustration instead of having to draw a whole page of 5 or 6 different illustrations. And that really appealed to me. And so by the time I graduated school, my focused shift, I was always very passionate about comics and comic art, but I realized that maybe that's not for me. Maybe that's just too tedious a practice and too difficult. And maybe my calling is to do like one illustration at a time, tell a story that way. So I sort of shifted more into illustration, which got me into editorial illustration. I did illustration for magazines. I did some advertising work, some storyboarding work, but it was all like outside of comics. And then it wasn't until maybe 6 or 7 years into my career as an illustrator that in a very roundabout way, I kind of ended up back into comics. And here I am now, doing the very thing that I kind of like ran from for so many years.
And you achieved that goal of being published in the mainstream. I mean, you did that Archie work, and so it definitely came back full circle. And like you said, here you are, and you're focused now a lot on teaching. I feel like through your channel, you're teaching while you're learning. Like, cause I see you on there studying stuff, and I know you're learning just as much as your viewers are.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I'm glad that that comes through, because I definitely don't want to. I never wanted the channel or the videos that I make to come from the perspective of, I have all this knowledge and I know how to do this thing, and now I want to show you how to do it, because I don't feel that confident in my abilities at all. I'm still evolving. When I think of my art and my art career, whatever that is, I still think about it the same way I used to think about it when I was like 9, 10, 11 years old, where it's like, one day I'm going to do this or this. And I sort of still aspire to this like much better version of myself as an artist. So to come from the perspective of somebody that is, that has all this knowledge and then is going to share it, it would be disingenuous on my part. So what I do like to do is continue to learn, as well as like just kind of geek out and nerd out on the things that I'm looking at. And so the channel for me is a really great combination of those two things, where it's like, oh, I'm trying to figure this thing out. I'm trying to learn how this works. I'm trying to apply it to my own art. And also look at how cool it is. It's like, this is so well drawn. And like, did you know about this artist or that artist? And maybe I'm just lonely and I need people to talk to, but the channel for me is a really great outlet to do all of those things together. And like I said earlier, the feedback that I've been getting has been really positive, because it feels like, similar to what you said, people feel like we're kind of learning together. And, for me, that I think that's like, I can't ask for more than that.
Yes. And for people that want to learn with you, you also have a Patreon to where they can get a whole other level of interaction with you. And I know you just started offering some portfolio reviews on there as well. So that's an awesome opportunity for people to get some actual like one-on-one instruction from you.
Yeah, that's been really great too. And most of everyone who's come into the Patreon space has come from YouTube, which is really great.
Yeah.
I think like, for me, that's been like a real natural progression in terms of sharing all these things that I just mentioned on my YouTube channel, but then actually getting to communicate with people one-on-one. And I feel as though in certain areas, for sure, just based upon the amount of years that I've been doing this, and more so the amount of mistakes I've made throughout this whole journey, I feel as though I'd have something to offer in that regard, in terms of like giving feedback to other artists, whether they want to be a professional comic book artist, an illustrator, or just somebody who's just trying to like get better at drawing because they like to do it on the side or at night when they come home. And it's always something that they wanted to, improve upon. I really do like working with people in that kind of one-on-one sense, whether it's through one of my tiers on my Patreon is like a mentorship kind of tier. And then also, like you mentioned, just the one-off portfolio reviews there. For me, similar to when I used to teach, it's like something happens when you have to explain yourself and kind of like, explain how it might be better to do something this way, or instead of this, try this. Like the act of explaining it actually kind of like reteaches you about why that is important, and it's also, again, like when I used to teach years ago, and sometimes I would spend a whole day saying something, of talking about whatever composition or black spotting or whatever it might be. And then, that night or that next day, when you find yourself back at the drawing board, drawing things, you can't help but hear everything you just said. And you're like, wow, I'm not taking my own advice. I should really apply that. So it's a good like feedback loop. Offering advice and teaching actually just makes you better as an artist yourself.
Yeah, it really provides a lot of accountability, because you have to be keeping yourself true to doing the things that you're expecting them to do. And it also forces you to have to explain the why. A lot of times it's like, here's how to do it, or do it this way. But a good instructor can actually break down the why.
For sure.
And I know when I started teaching jiu-jitsu, like I would show a move and I was doing all these extra steps and things without articulating them. And I remember my mentor for jiu-jitsu back then, and he still is a huge mentor of mine. He watched me instruct a couple of his classes when I visited him in Texas. And he says, you're doing really good, but he goes, you're doing like two or three movements there that you're not articulating to them. And those are important details that they need to understand, and they need to understand why they should do them, like how it's benefiting the overall technique and all of this. So that's a huge skill that you learn the more you teach, right?
Oh, for sure. That's great feedback that that instructor gave you, because it does become like a sense of efficiency. Like or trying to offer the why to a student makes you ask your own self that question too. And sometimes sometimes it could actually lead you to questioning, oh, why do I say that this is the way I do things?
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe this isn't the way to do it, or maybe I've just been used to going about it this way, or somebody told me years ago that this is why you're supposed to do it, and I just kind of did it that way. So this kind of like constant unraveling of the onion, and trying to figure out, like, go a little bit deeper into your process, so that not only you could be like a better teacher and offer better advice, but that you could just develop more as an artist yourself.
What are some commonalities you are seeing with the individuals that are seeking instruction and help with their art? Like, are there particular common areas that you see people struggling in? Like, if based on what you're experiencing with your Patreon and interacting with your students, your people that you're mentoring on there, if you could give the general public who's into art and trying to improve, like, what are the areas that you're seeing come up time after time that you're like, hey, you really need to buckle down on this, like, understand your basic shapes, like you're jumping to the finished piece too quick, like the structure's not there. Like, is there a lot of stuff like that coming to light?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think it's probably similar to jujitsu or anything that you've been doing for a very long time, and perhaps working in a instructor kind of position on. You tend to see a lot of the same areas that people tend to struggle in, or things that they tend to overlook. One of the things that I've been, I guess, relieved or sort of happy to see is that a lot of the commonality between everyone that I've been working with has been people who are very much interested in getting better at working with traditional tools, like,
Oh, nice.
away from sort of digital application. And that's refreshing to see, for sure. And I think it has probably something to do with the fact that if they find me by way of my channel, I tend to talk about older artists who worked in a
Yeah.
different kind of medium. And it's an area that I like to work in as much as I can. I definitely don't think working digitally is bad or any less of an artist. For the vast majority of my career, I've worked mainly
Yeah.
digitally. But the people wanting to get better at those traditional tools has been, like I said, a kind of refreshing and nice to see. So that's one of the commonalities. I think one of the other things that you kind of alluded to a little bit too is that, like, kind of jumping the gun kind of thing. Like, I'm good at doing this part of, maybe the comic making or illustration making process. And there's a lot of things in between, though, like A and D, and wanting to jump all the way, like, and skip over a few different steps. I think I might have even mentioned this in our last interview, but it's an easy trap to fall into. One of the things that I know I fell into as well when I was learning how to ink and get better at drawing, which was that, like, my inking skills kind of developed a little bit faster than my fundamental drawing skills, just because I took a liking to inking with a brush. And I
Right.
kind of got very encouraged by the fact that, like, this thing that I feared for so long, the brush, inking with a brush, was actually not as hard as I thought it was going to be. Or it's like I have more control over that than I thought I was going to have. And my drawings, though, underneath the inking lines, I think needed to develop more. So I felt probably as though I could overcompensate or correct my lack of drawing knowledge with my fancy brushy inking and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
with
And
the
when I look back,
polish.
yeah, polishing a turd or something like that. So when I look back, I cringe, as a lot of us often do when we look at older work, because that's one of the things that I see standing out the most. But I don't think I'm alone in that. I think that that's a thing that I see for a lot of people that I work with, and just a lot of younger artists in general, where there's this, understandably so, there's this part of the process that you kind of latch onto because it's encouraging, which is great.
Hmm.
But it's not to forget that it's part of a larger whole. There's so many different areas of creating art, and ideally speaking, we have to sharpen all of those tools, at the same time.
Definitely. Do you have a specific set of instructional materials like that you suggest, like as far as here, I would recommend you pick up this book or watch these videos. If you are going to look at a how to draw channel on YouTube, here's the ones I think are going to point you in the right direction. Are you coming up with kind of your recommendations for your students as well?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, there's resources that I tend to always recommend in general to people, but for the most part, it's like a case by case kind of basis because
Right.
everybody is at a different point in their journey with all of this, and so sometimes sometimes you come across an individual that's like, really really great. They're really really good, super talented, super skillful. It's not like uncommon for me to come across somebody who is, much better than myself, just whose work that I'm kind of like confused as to how they're not,
Right.
famous or, a professional working artist already, because they're just really, really good. And by the way, sometimes I do even work with other professionals as well. So it's for me then less about saying, hey, maybe you should work on those fundamentals just because
Hmm.
they already have it down, and more about um there's like little things, the way perhaps like a boxing coach or a jiu-jitsu coach or somebody who perhaps recognizes that the person that they're training is a better fighter than them, but
Right.
they might not have that fighter might not have the eye or the specific kind of knowledge that the trainer has. And so if that's the thing that they can offer, um, to take that athlete to that next level, that's sort of what I try to do in those cases. And in a lot of times, it's really pleasurable to work with people like that, just because you get to think about things in a different way. It's less about the fundamentals and more about perhaps maybe sometimes it is like a mindset thing.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's like there's blind spots in all of our processes, and thinking maybe that we're this one thing, when really if somebody just points out to you like, no, you're kind of like more in this area and you should kind of take advantage of these strengths that you have instead of trying to fight this other thing or whatever it might be. I really enjoyed doing that. But then again, like I said, other people I work with, it's more about fundamentals and stuff like that. So for everybody, it's just a little bit different, and it kind of just comes, uh, you know, case by case in terms of like what it is that I'm recommending to them. But there are, tried and true things out there as far as resources go. You might see up here, I got some Loomis,
Oh
like a
yeah.
box set. I don't think it's actually in the frame, but yeah, I have a Loomis box set. The Loomis books are really great. Certain artists that are just tried and true classic illustrators, Norman Rockwell, JC Leyendecker, comic people as well, all those like old school silver age artists, so many of which I talk about on the channel. As far as comic stuff goes, Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics
Oh,
is
that's a great one.
yeah, which is one of those more like kind of nuanced resources where it's less about, or it's none at all about fundamental drawing or anything like that, but it's more about like the theory of comics and visual storytelling. So there are some tried and true classics out there, but I think it's just different for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like anything. It's about finding what resonates and what can help take that individual to the next level, right? Like it's not there's no one fit answer for everybody. Like if it's a beginner, like you said, you can have your go-tos, check out how to draw comics the Marvel way, look at Loomis, look at maybe Bridgman or Bern Hogarth or somebody, but yeah, it has to be tailored to the person because everybody's at a different stage in their journey. And that's really cool that you're getting to work with some other like pro level people who are, that has to be pretty cool that they're coming to you for some advice and
I,
you know,
I don't understand it sometimes. Really, I sometimes I'm like, wow, it is very flattering, and in situations like that, as well as sometimes even in situations where I get hired for a certain illustration or comic things. I probably shouldn't say this, but my first reaction is like, why would you ask, like
little of that imposter syndrome kicks in.
For sure. A lot of it. But yeah, I feel like instead of being, intimidated by it or freezing up, I try my best. And I think the more I do this, the better I am at this, which is where like, I try to see what few skills that I might have, that are going to be beneficial to that individual. Whereas like, they're better at a whole list of other things than me. And, but there might be like one or two little things that I could offer that they don't have that could take them to that very next level.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like I could contribute the most. And I enjoy trying to identify what those things are. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's been a lot of fun. And, one other thing too, just getting back to like, offering people, things to look at or resources and other artists to learn from. One of the things that I noticed in this process too, is that some people, it's almost best not to recommend anybody. There's cases where I think all of us could feel this way from time to time, which is that we're almost overly, stimulated by all of the information that's out there.
100%.
And, it's like paralysis by analysis or whatever it is. It could be a little bit, it could hinder, I think, sometimes your progress. So again, that's a case by case thing where I feel like sometimes I might be able to identify where people are just looking at too many different things. They're getting too many different influences and, perhaps second guessing their own intuition. Because like
Right.
with all of this information that's out there, it's great on the one hand. On the other hand, sometimes it can kind of like, damper our ability to kind of use our own, intuition or the things that we already know and be able to apply it. So it, again, sometimes, people need to look at more art because they're only looking at, one or two artists and they're just too, tunnel vision on that. And then sometimes I feel like it's best to kind of just take a break from a lot
For
of
sure.
stimulus and do it yourself.
Yeah. And that old adage of comparison is a thief of joy can come into it as well, because as artists, we're so critical of ourselves. And sometimes it's hard to not compare yourself to all these amazing individuals that you see posting on, you could go on Instagram for the next 20 years and never run out of seeing all new, amazing, super talented artists who are in that realm of, I see them and I think, like you do, like, how is this person not like the top guy at Marvel or DC? This work is amazing, and that can, especially with beginners, I think you can get in that like, oh man, I'm never going to be this good. Like there's no way I'll reach that level. And it could be a hindrance to be seeing that in your feed day in and day out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think that goes, to so many different areas of everything nowadays, which is just to like, a lot of it is, smoke and mirrors anyway,
Yeah.
You don't know how that artist got to be where they are in that moment. Sometimes, people hit their stride when they're in their 40s or 50s or whatever. And it was 20 years prior that they were sort of like
Yeah.
struggling. So yeah,
you don't
all
see
that
the
stuff.
part of the iceberg that's under the water. You're seeing the little tip that's sticking out.
Exactly.
And also
Exactly.
with social media, you're seeing the curated version. Most of us aren't posting our failures on there. Like
For sure. Yeah,
it's
even
usually a lot of beautiful finished pieces. You didn't see the 20 drawings he threw away to get to that point, right?
We all do it. We all do it. So it's one of those things where it just comes with a certain level of, maybe it's maturity or something, but just to know that when you do see something that didn't just, happen in a bubble, that's part of a much larger evolution. But
Yeah.
like you said, there's just so much out there that it's hard to put that all into perspective in the moment. And it could affect all of us, doesn't matter your age or how long you've been doing it.
For sure. Now you do a cool challenge that you're getting ready to do your second one over on Instagram. You have the 28 panels challenge, which I participated in last time, and I feel like it really forced me to grow a lot. Like seeing it through, and that challenge of doing essentially doing a panel a day, like in the prompt words, like it's like, how do you come up with something to draw for that word? Like,
Yeah,
and it forced me to like create a story too and come up with a little character, a couple characters and all of that. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about this? Probably by the time this episode comes out, this year's one will probably be completed, but, tell them about this 28 panels challenge you do in February every year.
for sure. Yeah. And if you are watching this and it's past February, like I say in a lot of whenever I talk about this challenge, ideally it's great to do it in February because that's when most people will be doing it. But this concept, this idea of doing one panel a day for X amount of days, it is something that you could use no matter what month you're in or whatever.
Yeah,
So yeah,
exactly.
for anyone who might be watching this later on, feel free to use this concept in whatever month. But yeah, the idea of 28 panels is there's 28 days in February. Figured it's a shorter month, so it's a little bit more, attainable to most of us. 28 days every day. Just commit to doing one panel of comics every day, and it could sort of accumulate into one 28 panel story, a continuous story that, goes from one day to the next.
Which
Or
is
they could be,
kind of what you and I opted for last
yes,
time, right?
yes, yeah. And I very well remember your story and the comic that was coming up. That was really awesome to see because I feel like with a lot of us, myself included, um, it's a little tough in the beginning, and then you start to hit your stride. Like a lot of things, it
Hmm.
becomes this kind of habit. And also, there's evolution sometimes throughout this process too. Again, if you really are trying to dedicate yourself to doing this one panel a day, um, it's gonna change. It's gonna evolve. You're gonna notice along the way that there are better ways of approaching a panel than others. So when you look over the course of the month, you get to see that evolution in your own work. You get to see where certain part telling certain types of stories or composing certain types of images are harder than others. So yeah, and again, if you want to tell a complete story using this method, you could do that. Or if you just want to take the time to do just one-off panels that are maybe tell uh, a complete story within each one of those panels, sort of like a gag cartoon or just random non sequitur panels
Hmm.
that tell some wacky story that makes no sense. You could do that too. Or this year, I'm trying to really open it up to the fact that like if you just want to use this time to do a study of another or a different artist that day, do like a copy of an Alex Toth panel, a copy of a Jim Lee panel, whatever
Oh
it might
yeah,
be.
that's a cool idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and by the end of the month, you have 28 studies that you did. Certainly, in some way or another, you're going to learn something through that process as well. And so, one of the other options that I'm encouraging this year, which is what I'll be doing, is if there's a story that say you've had in mind, or even a script you wrote, or whatever it might be, and you haven't, you're maybe you have a little cold feet in terms of starting it, or you keep putting it off for one reason or another. Maybe just use this as the excuse to do the first 28 panels of that story. Maybe your story is the next like Lord of the Rings, and it's going to take
Right.
500 pages to tell the story. But before you commit to doing that, maybe just do the first 28 panels and do one panel of that story a day. And at the very least, at the end of the month, you might say, "Oh, I'm glad I did these first 28 panels of the story because I made a bunch of mistakes and I realized I don't want to do it this way. I'll start again after this now, but I'm that much better for it because I know which route I don't want to go." That's one sort of benefit that could come out of the process. The other that could come out of the process of doing that is just going like, "Oh, wow, it's March and I have the first 28 panels done." That might be, depending on how you organize your pages or whatever, that could be 10 pages worth of comics. That could be 20 pages worth of comics, whatever. but it's the ball is now in motion. It's moving. And I think that's like the hardest thing about starting comics, is because they are so intimidating. There's so many different things that come together. You're essentially making this movie on paper,
Mhm.
and you're doing it sometimes, a lot of times for most of us, we're doing it all by ourselves. So there's an intimidating kind of feeling sometimes to approaches, but doing it in this way is just taking that little baby step every day. It compounds over time, and then the next thing you know, you kind of have, by the end of the month, you have stuff in front of you, and it's up to you to figure out what you want to do with that stuff.
Yeah, it was really cool, and it was cool to see like the different ways we all interpreted the challenge. Like, I know I did more like a comic strip style almost, wherein each panel was its own thing, but the story continued throughout based on each word prompt, and the characters remained the same in each panel each day. You planned ahead and actually had it so your panels composed the different pages like you were talking about, so you were able to you were assembling a page as you were going along.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah, and whatever way you do it, even if you don't want to think about page layout in the beginning during that month, and you're just kind of taking it panel by panel, that could, if it is something that you then want to use later on, that's just like an interesting exercise then in composing a page. Like, now all of a sudden you have these panels, and you could now think about, how do I want to compose these panels on the page to
mhm,
make it read the best, to make it look the best. And then that takes you into that like next part of the process of comics, which is like this constant like Russian doll. You have to
yeah,
think of like the macro, and then it goes lower and lower and lower and lower. And one of the steps within that process is how does then the page read as a whole? There's so many compositions within a composition. So yeah, if you have those fragmented pieces of panels, that's kind of like, sometimes that could be an advantageous place to be as a you know, comic storyteller, where it's like, oh, now I can figure out how I want to arrange these on a page. And do I want to do it in maybe a strip format, horizontal, or do I want to do it classic 11 by 17 kind of comic style? Or maybe this could be something where each panel is its own page, and, whatever it might be, but it gives you that freedom to work with design that way.
yeah, so many possibilities. And you did something I thought was cool, in that you went back and you actually started recreating, like you let me preface this with the fact that I think the original stuff was amazing, and I know you wanted to put more time into it, so you decided to, you were going to redo it. Some things you kept the same, some things you changed. And this is your was it called Stardust?
Stardust, yeah.
Yeah, your Stardust story. And now you're taking it and you're reinterpreting what you did in the original 28 panel challenge with your pages, and kind of going in with a new set of eyes and completing that story.
Yeah, I think it's the obsessiveness in me, or the perfectionist, or whatever. But I felt like this is a really great kind of opportunity for me to. It's like a homework assignment. It's like being back in school, or just again going back to that student kind of mindset where I'm just trying to improve. And sometimes the hardest thing, as like a if you're an artist who's making their own stuff, the hardest thing is like having the stuff to work with. Sometimes so many things can be theoretical in your mind. Like, what
For
if I did
sure.
this? What if I did this? And uh, finally, just having pages in front of you and stuff to look at, whether it's great or fantastic, or, worthy of anything, long term, or going to ever win an Eisner or anything like that. That doesn't matter. It's more about like, now you have material to work with, and certainly there's improvements to make on all of our stuff. And so I looked at that 28 panel challenge from last year as like a really great like first draft of something. Um, as the month went on, I really started to evolve in my process. And so, which I thought was great. And that's kind of the point in some ways of the challenge. But I, I wanted to see if I could create something that had a certain level of consistency throughout based on whatever it is that I learned. And also, going back to what we were talking about in terms of working with traditional tools, um, I've been incorporating, working by hand on paper with ink for a while now. That's how I started. Then I kind of, for several years there, got really used to working digitally. And so over the last like 4 or 5 years at this point, I've been really transitioning back into working traditional, but drawing illustrations traditionally and then drawing comic books, sequential pages traditionally are two different things. And
Oh yeah.
so the comic pages, drawing those traditionally, I hadn't done in a while. So I utilized this challenge as a way for me to just get back into like drawing on paper. There is a big difference in terms of like the comic making process when it from digital to traditional, and they're both completely valid. Not one is not better than the other, but it's just different ways of working and different ways of a different mindset essentially that goes into it. So
Yeah.
that was part of the sort of focus for me for that month. And after that month, I felt like, oh, now I feel more confident drawing comics in this traditional way. And what if I tried to take it now to that next level? And I spent pretty much the rest of the year just noodling with this thing in a way that I wouldn't do if it were a professional job, because
Right.
no one would pay me to noodle something that long.
Yeah.
But if I have the advantage of not working with a publisher right now or whatever it might be on this particular thing, I could just kind of take advantage of that and try to use it as a way to perfect something in my eyes at least, and just get better at it. So that's what I did for the remainder of 2025. And then now I feel like I have a much better vision of the story that I'm going to start this time around. I did a lot more preparation this time around too, in terms of like the story as a whole. And so I feel like, oh, this will just be a great opportunity for me to just start this story and see where it goes.
In talking about the traditional approach in recrafting this story, you also delved into hand lettering, which is
Yeah.
like, that's bringing back an ancient art form, because pretty much all comics, I would say within the last 20 plus years, all the lettering is done separately digitally in Adobe Illustrator usually, and going in, putting the word balloons over the art and doing the lettering that way. So what inspired that? Because you got like a lettering guide and everything.
Yeah, I think it just looking at way too many artist editions for my YouTube channel and just otherwise. I just got like, every time I look at these old original art, like anything before probably, the 90s or so, you look at an original page of comic art, it's like everything is on that thing, like
Yep.
all of it. And it doesn't matter if it was a paste up or whatever it might be, it's all on the paper. And I really wanted to recreate that myself as best as I could. And knowing though that that is not in my skill set, like that area, that's something I always overlooked, something I felt like I never really needed to do, just because, yeah, I could always letter it digitally, or when I, whatever comic projects I've worked on in the past, there's always a letterer or somebody who just does that for you. You kind of like
Right.
make sure there's enough space in the panel, but then they'll do it and make it look really nice. So this was something though that like, yeah, you look at some of these older artists and you realize that there's so much more than just like a good drawer or a good inker or whatever it might be. It's like they just know how to do all the different areas of this thing. It's like a true craftsman. And so yeah, I was like, let me give it a shot. I got the Ames lettering guide and just tried to do it the traditional way. I lettered it on that first go last February, and then of course in the redo, that was like my biggest focus was to just like, let me see if I could just get better at lettering. And I think I made a little bit of improvement, but for me, that's big just because,
Oh yeah.
the lettering has always been a big challenge for me.
So it was inspired by looking at all these various artist editions that you and I are obsessed with. And that's what I wanted to round out the end of the podcast with. Our love of these artist editions. So people that don't know what an artist edition is, generally it is a gigantic book that is reproducing the original size of the pages that the artist drew on or did the penciling, inking, production of the comic book on. It scans or high resolution photographs of the original pages where you can see all the process, the pencil lines that didn't get erased, the whiteout corrections, the old yellowed word balloons that were pasted on top of it with glue, like all of this. And you and I are pretty dang obsessed with these artist editions. First, before we delve into our love of it, how many do you have now? Because I'm running out of room here.
Yeah, that's the hardest part with these books, man. They're so big. It's the hardest part is like storing them and where to put them. My collection is probably not as big as yours, but I have some pretty large ones. Some of those older, like the Ramita one is really, really big because that's when they were working. They were working at that much larger size,
like
than
double up.
17.
Yeah, I think they were like double up. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very big, and they're super impressive. But the hardest part is storing them and finding the room for them. I'm not sure exactly how many I have. I have a few over there I'm looking at right now, but I've been very fortunate that most of the artist editions that I own actually have been gifts, which is like, that's
great.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, whoever might know me knows that that's probably the best gift you could get me is an artist edition. I'm not
Same
I'm
here.
not
I'm
much
putting
of
it out into the ether. Guys,
for sure.
If you're ever struggling to know what to get me,
there you go, man. Future Christmas, birthday.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're easy probably in that way because I'm not somebody who spends my money on a lot of, stuff. I don't like to, collect things or just buy random things. But the only time I'm ever tempted in terms of like, man, should I spend $150 on this one thing is an artist edition. But I tell this to other people, especially people who are, trying to get better as an artist or whatever, is that it is more than just buying a book. It really is sort of like an investment in your education to some extent. I mean, having access to the art of, say, a John Romita or an Alex Toth or a Neal Adams or something, and being able to see it at that full size, like you said, with all the imperfections and everything that goes into it, it's the closest you could get to holding the actual original in your hand. And more than anything, more than whatever, school I went to or whatever, being exposed to original art in that way by someone who's really good that's just what you need sometimes. It's just to sit with it, look at it, and just, it begs a lot of times the why. Like, why did they do this? Why did they do that? Why was that, white out there? And sometimes you can see where like they just, thinned out like the contour of a certain figure, or there's white out underneath that face, meaning that like they didn't like that face. They just whited out and drew right on top of it. And if at the very least you come away realizing that they're not perfect, this is not a thing that just happens the first time it goes, the artist puts their pen to the paper. This sometimes they, quote unquote, mess up or think that it could be better. And to be able to have that kind of ability to just throw white out on top of something, redraw it, cut a piece of paper out, paste it on top, whatever kind of correction, it demystifies the process, I think, in a way that could really open up a young artist's perspective on like how they need to go about this. Going back to what we were talking about before, this like perfectionism thing, or everybody showing their best face, knowing that like, no, it's production art at the end of the day. You see like
production side. Yeah.
And that's really
whatever it took to get it done and meet the deadline.
Yeah, for them, the final product was that final printed comic, and because it was all cleaned up and it was colored and all that, they
Yeah.
didn't want people seeing that other stuff. And
No.
and it's only decades later that there's all these nerds like us that just love to see that. Look, show me all the mistakes, show me the yellowing of the paper, show me all that stuff. And
Yeah.
because it's a great insight, perhaps the biggest insight you'll ever get into some of these artists' process is just looking at those originals. And so they're expensive, but they're very much worth it.
Well, and they are way less expensive than actually owning a single one of the pages in a lot of these books, because we're talking of millions upon millions of dollars, depending on what artist edition you're looking at, that it would cost to touch a piece of that art. So, to me, it's worth it. A good artist edition, maybe $150 or something. Like, you can look at millions of dollars worth of art that you will probably never get to touch in real life.
For sure. Especially, I think I don't have it. It's on my list, but Jim Lee has an X-Men one, I think.
It's amazing.
Do you have that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. And that one, that might be, if you were to calculate the value of all of those pages, that's millions of dollars right there.
Yeah, because it has all the covers from when he did X-Men 1, and has like the fold out of that. And
amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, the last thing I'll ask you before I let you go today.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite one out of the artist editions that you own?
I'm working on something right now over there, and I have, as inspiration, I have the Alex Toth Bravo for Adventure one open, like just next to me, because there's certain lines that I'm trying to just like, I just want to get that kind of line. And I remember listening to an interview with Daniel Klaus, the cartoonist, and he was talking about working on this one particular story that he was working on. And I think at first glance, you might not see it in his art, but because he has that very like underground kind of like alternative comics approach to or aesthetic to his work, but he's really skillful in the way he inks and draws, and so much of it is inspired by like Silver Age comics and that like very traditional way of making comics. So he was talking about how, and I forget which one he had open, but while he was drawing this comic, he had the page like on top of the open artist edition.
Oh, nice.
It might have been like a Wally Wood artist edition or something like that. And just being able to draw your work, and then right next to you or underneath it is like what you're aspiring to right there. I'd say that's probably not the best thing to do all the time, but when you're trying to really reach for something or play within a certain type of atmosphere, I think that could be helpful. So that's actually one of the things that I'm doing right now. So yeah, my favorite is probably the one that's out right now, which is the Alex Toth Bravo for Adventure. But
I was going to guess, if I had to guess which one you were going to say, I was going to pick one of either the Mazzucchelli Batman or Daredevil.
Yeah. And
I know really, those ones are up there for you.
It depends on the day, really, to be honest. The Batman
I personally, I can't pick a favorite out of all the ones I have, because it's like you said, it depends on what you're in the mood for.
Yes. Yeah. I think the easiest way for me to answer it is just to say whichever one is closest to me right now. But yeah, all of them are fantastic for different reasons.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come back on the podcast. I love our conversations. I could have kept you on here for 3 hours. We could have spent the whole thing talking about the artist editions, but
yes, maybe another time.
We will most definitely do this again, man.
For sure. I very much appreciate you having me back. I'm honored to be in that small group of returning guests, and I'm definitely looking forward to doing more.
My absolute pleasure. And why don't you take this opportunity at the end to let everybody know where to follow you online, where to keep track of everything you're doing. The stage is yours. Let them know.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, we mentioned the YouTube channel. You can find me there. That's where I'm spending a lot of my time, making all kinds of videos based upon so much of the stuff that we talked about in this interview. That's just Thomas Pitilli. It's the name of my channel. Keep it real simple. If you want to find me anywhere, it's just Thomas Pitilli. It's a hard name to spell, but and say for a lot of people, but it sounds like a pasta or something like
Yeah,
that.
it
Like a little,
does. It
like,
does.
I'll have that with the Pitillis.
Yes.
But yeah, Instagram, Thomas Pitilli, YouTube, Thomas Pitilli. I don't think I do really anything else.
Don't forget the Patreon, brother.
Oh yes, the Patreon. There you go. The Patreon. You can find me over there if you're interested in working as a, the mentorship program that I was talking about. There's plenty of other tiers as well too. So yeah, check that out. I'm doing the portfolio reviews. If you just want to sign up for a random portfolio review that goes through the Patreon, but you don't have to be a patron to sign up for that. And yeah, you could always just also email me, contact@thomaspitilli.com. It's a good way to communicate
Perfect.
as well.
Awesome, brother. Well, listen, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Hang out with me for a moment here while I talk to everybody listening and watching. I just love doing this podcast, and I would like many other people to be able to see all of the amazing creators that I have on here. The best way you can help facilitate that and encourage the algorithm to show people these videos and get the listeners in here is to either do a review. If you listen on audio, a review would be greatly appreciated. A follow. If you're watching on YouTube, easiest thing you can do is like the video. You don't even have to subscribe, but I'd encourage you to subscribe as well. Share with a friend. That way more people can get on board and get on here and learn with us, because we learn a lot. We talk about a lot of different things and have a lot of amazing creators like Thomas on here. If you want to give that extra level of support, you can head over to the Nerdy Mewzings Patreon. I'm reworking it right now, but it is going to include a lot of bonus content and probably going to be pivoting similar to Ink Pulp and offering some bonus content from the episodes that you can only see on Patreon. I'm working that all out. And in the meantime, everybody, keep it nerdy.